Guys, real quick, I want to also let sorry, what's her name? The girl in the middle,
Lana.
Lana. Okay, I want to let Andrew answer Lana's question before we move on.
This doesn't like.
What would be an alternative to Me Too?
So I would try to move towards a patriarchal system where women were slowly phased out of the workplace altogether, and then that solves this problem.
Okay, I
How would
disagree.
how do we survive and live?
The same way that we survived and lived for most of our history, which is
Yeah, but
without
that
women
didn't work
inside the
because men would
workforce.
abandon their homes to go to other women. What the first divorce case was because the guy ditched his wife and his kids and went to be with another woman.
Which has what to do with
Wait,
anything?
what?
I'm a widow. I mean, like, what would I
What does
do?
it have to do with anything?
It has to do with everything.
What does it
How
have to
are
do
women
with
gonna
it?
Survive? How will they survive?
The
if
same
they're
way
not
that they've
working?
always survived without women in the workforce. There was not a problem with
How?
the survival before women were in the workforce.
Well,
There
how
won't
did
be
it
a
happen before?
problem
Just
with
say that. How
survival
did-
post. Women are
No.
enabled to be in the workforce only through the usage of technology. If you look at the
Wait,
mass,
no, wait! Don't do this diatribe. Answer the question.
I'm
How would a woman? Let's say a
trying.
woman gets widowed. How does she survive?
she would probably remarry. But
Why
not
would you
only
wanna
that, the
why-
assets of the husband always have traditionally gone to the woman. Not only that, there's usually an obligation from the family of the person you were widowed from who's going
That's
to help
assuming
you out.
the man was doing everything right. Like the man was just working hard
we
all the time,
can't
saving
we can't
money, that he had
assess we can't
assets.
assess all of society just based
that's
on
how
what
it is
if
now.
risks of what if a meteorite strikes you. That's not
How many
fair.
men do you
And I'm
think
sorry.
right
Hang on,
now-
let me finish, lady. I'm sorry that a fucking meteorite might strike your husband and he might die, but we're not going to make a societal prescription based on that. That would be insanity. So yes, there's going to be some unfairness baked in, but we can't unfortunately alleviate all unfairness from every situation over all times. We can't do
Isn't
that.
it common right now that like the average savings rate is like negative for like people under 35? So basically, every widow under the age of like 35 or 40 is just fucked.
First of all, they're not fucked. If you were to reduce the women's participation in the workforce, you would see a massive increase in salary, more than likely for men. That follows, in fact.
No, it doesn't follow.
How does it
Literally.
not?
No, that is
It doesn't
true.
follow
But
because
for-
the number one indicator of like countries becoming prosperous and successful is women entering the workforce and starting to own businesses. That's like one of the biggest indicators of it.
Destiny,
talking about
you're
$1
familiar
trillion.
with supply and demand, right? If you have
Yep.
less workers, do you have more of a supply of workers or less of a
You
supply?
understand that when you go
Answer
to
my
high
question
school-
like I just answered yours.
No, I'll answer your question.
Then just say
the
yes.
Supply and demand X graph is an incredibly crude and simplistic way to analyze markets. Yes, of course, if you remove all the women from the workforce, the men will get higher wages.
Then why the
However,
fuck did you
you've
just
also
argue
got
they
a-
wouldn't?
What?
Why did you just argue they wouldn't?
Because every single economist in the world agrees with me and not you, Andrew. So
Agrees
maybe
with
there's a
you about
better-
what? You just agreed with
Agrees
me.
that Women start to own businesses and enter the workforce. It's one of the
Bro,
higher
you
percentage
just
figures.
agreed with me and my position that if all women were exited from the workforce tomorrow, salaries for men would skyrocket. You literally just agreed with
Salaries-
that.
salaries-
trillion
wait,
less
salaries-
dollars
yeah.
in our economy. since
Salaries might increase,
Mm-hmm.
Andrew. Do you think murdering half the U.S. population would be good for the economy? Because now you've got
That's a
half the
red.
workforce-
What happens to
So hang on. So
productivity?
phasing women out for one thing. There's a massive distinction between that and murdering half the population. But assuming that we granted your hypothetical and half the population was somehow murdered, salaries would still increase for the half that were here. Yes, Destiny.
No,
And
that's
what would
not.
happen to
That's just not how
productivity?
it works.
Yes,
There's
that.
no
Then why did you
will
just
not
get done
find-
saying that that's how it
No,
works?
I didn't get done saying. You're using a high school supply demand graph to analyze an entire worker economy. Workers are a supply in the economy. Generally, for an economy, when you increase your supplies, you increase the standards of living, you increase the GDP, you increase wages across the board. Here's a question, Andrew. If we
So you
look-
just
if we
agreed
look
with
at-
me again.
No, I didn't.
You
agree with
did.
you, Andrew. I agree with you that the very crude supply demand graph might seem to support what you're saying, but there's a
Uh-huh.
whole bunch of reasons why a crude supply and demand graph would never explain in something entirely like wage markets for an entire society. That's absurd.
You just listen. You've agreed with me in every way you possibly can. You just keep deferring to, but there's other complexities which might come in. Okay, fair enough. There might be some other complexities that come in, but men's salaries, if women exited the workforce tomorrow, would increase drastically. There's no way around that.
And then they would decrease. Yes, your consumer base would fall. Your overall level of wealth would fall. Your overall, like everything.
Why would your consumer base fall?
Women entering the workforce has brought so much money to the economy when you compare it to like if women were never, that those changes never happened. So the economy has 100% been benefited by women entering the workforce.
Why?
Hold on. No, wait. This isn't even up for debate. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
it's not.
Where are all
It's
of these?
not.
I'm sorry. Answer this. Where are all of these hyper-competitive countries that don't let women in the workforce because they want to be more competitive on the world stage? Can you name like one?
You mean nations which are in the West? They're all egalitarian, and so they've all pushed for this. However, we can. Yeah, and I'm answering your question.
You're not.
We can look at the markers before women entered in the workplace, and we were very prosperous.
First of all,
No,
no,
I
we're
think
not.
that's
Yes, we were. We were very prosperous.
Where are the countries that are out competing everybody else because they're like, we're not going to let our women enter the workforce because it's better for our country? Give me one.
Yeah, so for
Okay,
instance, like
again,
China-
you're
Wait,
making
Lauren, let Andrew answer, and then
Yeah.
we'll go to you.
Listen. There's a distinction to be made here. That
You're not
even
gonna
if
answer.
I
You don't have an
can't,
answer. No, you're rambling.
so I'm
Where's
telling
one
you
at?
the
What was
telling
your
you the
answer?
truth.
You're not-
Right
you
now
have
in
no answer
current
because you're-
right now currently in existence in the West, no, I couldn't point to one because of egalitarianism. But I can still use the historic marker to show that those same nations, before women entered the workforce in mass, were quite prosperous.
Sorry.
I think it's like
Doesn't
a
answer his
decent
question
point.
still.
That
How did that
it's a
not
decent
answer your
point.
question?
Because he asked you for an example of a country today that exists.
All
today
Western nations were prosperous
I'm trying to
even
compare,
before
like,
women entered the
you can't go
workforce.
back in
All of
time.
them.
You're giving me the argument that like women entering the workforce is like I don't know, has made it so reality TV has appeared. You're just correlating two things that aren't necessarily related to each other. The way that you would study this in econ is you wouldn't go, what was it like 500 years ago? And now let's compare it today. You would compare one country to other countries.
In
And you would say,
econ,
oh,
you wouldn't look at the historic standards. I think you would.
No, you would never look. No, you don't look at. That's why when
You
do
don't
any
look at
econ
historic
research-
standards.
No. Open the NBR. Open any econ study ever. You don't say like, oh well, 50 years ago, what was it like? Let's see how this. Like, for instance, when you do minimum wage experiments, you go state by state. You pick placebo cities.
So when
You
a
compare-
Keynesian economist
I don't know what you mean by Keynesian
if a
economist, bro. I don't
Keynesian
have the
if
political
a
term. I'm just talking
Keynesian
about
hang
the
on
research.
stop whatever economist you want, but I'll just say Keynesian. If a Keynesian economist goes in and to a government position and he wants to offer economic solutions, wouldn't he appeal to Keynes? And Keynes markets and solutions, and those market solutions are going to be based on those standards from that. What do you mean?
No, you don't go up to a guy and you go, hey, what about Keynes? Hey, what about the 1950s?
You do.
No, you. Okay.
For
Well, first of all,
economics, of course you do.
No, you don't.
I'll even
No,
grant
you
you
don't.
that. But they would highlight examples of, hey, this country implemented Keynesian economics or economic policies, and that this is how it played out.
No, we don't use a historic standard, remember? Destiny just said you don't ever look at a historic standard when it comes to the economy. It's the most, that is the dumbest single thing I have ever heard in my life, by the way.
Policy that banned women
I
from
have
work.
never heard anything
And
that
resulted in
stupid
increase in
in my
GDP.
life. Now, I want to ask you, Corey, do you think that it's unwise to look at historic standards when you're making economic policy, Corey?
Across the board, universally, no, there are some lessons to be learned from history, but to Destiny's point, like making economic policy today, generally speaking, is driven by data generated today and looking at other policies.
Yes, but you're still looking at a historic standard and you're comparing the data. That way you know which is good and which is bad policy.
Can you give me an example?
How
of
can you
major
make a
decision or
policy for the
single
future
piece of
with-
econ research that's looking back to the 1950s for modern day insight into how we should be doing government policy?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's done all the time. Of course. Of
Then
course.
you should be able to name one time. It's
Yeah.
done.
Well, I can send over tons of data that goes over 100
Name
years
one.
of
You just said
economic
all the
policy.
time. You don't have
I
one off
just
the top of
did.
your head.
Keynesian economics,
That's not
Austrian
a study.
economics.
That's not a policy. That's not
No,
anything.
no, hang on. The Keynesian economics is our current policy, Destiny.
You're oh god, why am I getting baited by this? I'm sorry.
Depending on like what their gender is.
Okay, so
It's as simple
this
as that.
from
and one of the marker of masculinities is a larger body.
California.
It's higher
You can pull this up because it'd be easier for me than sending it. But California State University, Fullerton.
I'll pull it up.
There was no nuance in their results at all. Out of 0 out of 160 women surveyed showed a statistical preference for weaker men. 0 out of 160 surveyed.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, hold on.
Doesn't do anything.
Why do you? But I mean,
Okay,
why
hold on,
why
wait,
would you
wait,
think
let's-
that would be? What do you think their answers were?
Sorry. None of this has anything. I'm fully granting that women tend to be attracted to markers of masculinity. What I'm doing is rejecting your weird psychoanalytic narrative that the reason that they're specifically attracted to his physical size is because there's a sneaky part of them that's being like, oh, god damn, I'm really excited for when he dominates me.
But
Like
what-
that, especially globally, right? Because what Grace is saying.
Well, she
is-
didn't just say that. She also said it's because of markers of protection and being able to protect you and all that
Hold
stuff.
on, hold on. What she's saying is that because there's a sexual desire to be dominated in women, which is common, and I've already granted that generalizes to all parts of women's life, and it implies that in like the day-to-day interaction.
So obviously,
Let's
you're
definitely get
basically-
rewarded. Destiny hasn't talked in like 20 minutes.
if you want to be dominated by somebody sexually, you also want to be dominated by them in your life.
That's
clearly,
ridiculous.
obviously.
No, that might be your experience, but that is not the average experience.
If that's your relationship with a man sexually, it would also be your relationship with him outside of the bedroom as
Yeah,
well.
no, I don't know. That's where I got to
Absolutely
delineate.
not true.
That's where I have to
hold on,
delineate
wait,
too.
wait,
Alex,
wait, wait,
Alex,
wait,
Alex,
okay,
Alex, Alex,
okay,
Alex,
here's-
Alex,
here's-
Alex, what is your number
Come
one?
on, okay,
Let Destiny talk. He hasn't talked in like 20
Yeah,
minutes.
okay. There, chances are we are a sexually dimorphic species. There's some traits that men have, there's some traits that women have. Just because somebody has a preference for a trait doesn't mean that you can ascribe some causal link for why they have that preference. If it was the case that men grew fucking horns and women didn't, women would probably be attracted to nice horns. Not because men could wrestle with them or stab things with them, but just because that's going to be a difference between men versus women. Why do men have a preference for short women? Is there some advantage for us for women being short? There's not. But being short seems to be like a cool thing because you're like, oh, cool, because it's a feminine thing, because it's a way that we're different.
But
just
Destiny,
because we're
that
different
means
in
that
some
you
ways.
can dominate them if they're
Sure,
small.
just because we're different in some ways doesn't mean that there's like a function to why we want that certain difference. It's just a highlight for the ways that we're different from one another. Why do men like women with nice asses? You don't feed kids with your butt. It doesn't actually do anything. There's no function to it.
Yeah, but
so no, just because there's a preference for a difference on a thing doesn't mean that you can go ahead and load that and ascribe that to a whole bunch of different reasons for why
But
you might
there's,
have a
but
preference
don't you
for
think
that
that there's a
reason there
distinction in preference if people who are surveyed about what their reasons are, and in the survey you have like 160 women and they all say they prefer this trait versus kind of the mixed
Yeah, they
bag of
prefer-
some
yeah,
women saying or some men
most
saying I like
women are
shorter
gonna
women.
Most women are going to prefer taller men. Most men are probably going to prefer shorter women.
Destiny, but that's ridiculous. You're just saying they prefer taller men
But-
because they prefer taller men. That's not an argument.
Yes.
Why do they
No,
like
no,
them
no, no,
being
no, no, no.
tall?
Yeah, you're the one that's
Ridiculous.
unfortunately you're trapped into
What
a
is
world
it
where
that
you're
women
loading.
like about looking up at a guy? What is it?
It might just be that you just like the fact that the guy is taller. That it literally
You're just
that
coping so
Wait,
hard. You know
Why
the
do you
answer.
think
Never mind.
female mooses are super into like mooses with big antlers? Do you think that's because when they look at the male moose with big antlers, she's like, oh God, this male moose can dominate me? No, it's because the antlers have been sexually evolved to cue masculinity and testosterone levels, and what she's selecting for like strong partners to like lead to good offspring. The idea of like applying all this extra Freudian shit is just your stuff. This is like the whole problem with Evo Psych. So we just try to imbue a whole bunch of stuff into it when it's like, because it evolved, because they evolved as different markers. We prefer tall men.
But you're the
because
one
it
using
marks
Evo Psych.
masculinity.
What do you mean? You're the one using Evo Psych. So the thing is like if we're
How did I
talking
know- how did
if
I
we're
not
talking
think that?
about
I'm so defeated.
surveys, if we're talking about
Andrew, you did it
we're
again.
talking about surveys. Well, it's always easy with you, Erudite. But if we're talking
Utterly
about surveys,
demolished,
a moose can't tell you why. A moose can't tell you why they prefer the moose with big antlers. But men and women can tell you why they prefer these things. That's the
Yeah,
distinction.
okay. Hold on. My bad. Then I completely concede the point. I didn't know that. Can you show me the survey you have where women said that they prefer tall men because they want to get dominated? I'll wait for that. Once you, because
In
that's
every
you win the
aspect of
Oh
argument.
my
life.
God,
Yeah,
you
let
guys
me
have
tell
a
you.
survey. This is why you guys suck so much.
Oh,
You
so
talk
now
about-
the survey doesn't
No,
matter.
you don't.
Now the
You don't
data
need a
doesn't matter.
survey. Ask
Oh,
any
okay,
woman. Ask
okay.
any woman.
Look, when
Oh,
the data agrees
now
with
the
me,
data
it's
doesn't matter.
very valid, and you science boys
Oh,
should
it's
like
so
it. But now when
ridiculous.
it
We have
doesn't
to look
agree
at
with
data.
me,
Why do women like-
science is a
Gotcha.
joke.
My bad. Okay. I
Why
thought you were
do
making
men
an
like
argument.
breasts? Do you need a study on why men like breasts, Destiny? Why do men like breasts?
I don't know. You tell me.
I
What's
actually
attractive about them?
I don't probably because again it's a difference in species between it's a sexually dimorphic difference
Okay,
between
and
men and
what is
women.
the
So you're
difference that it signals? What is the difference between a
it
man's
literally
chest
does
and a
not
woman's
single
chest?
it does not single anything.
It signals. Wait, all
Yeah,
it
you would
signals
think
is
that because you're fucking
female.
gay.
Wait,
The
all it
problem
signals
Destiny,
is
Great.
female.
Hold on, wait,
Grace.
Grace,
Signal-
what do you think, Grace?
breast
What do you
signal
think?
nurturing, literal feeding of children,
No,
femininity,
So Destiny, the
Grace,
number one,
Grace,
the number
That's
one
what
reason,
Grace,
the number one
Grace,
reason given in
Grace,
these surveys
Grace,
is
Grace,
because they
Grace,
feel more
Grace,
protected
Grace,
by them.
Grace,
That's
that's
not
great.
the
That's
same
not
thing as
dominating
domination.
somebody. Grace, do you think that
It
having bigger boobs
absolutely
means you can
is.
feed your
No,
kid better?
it's not.
No, I don't think bigger boobs has a sign of breastfeeding, but it's obviously a sign that somebody has like is extremely feminine. Your body does reflect your soul,
Hold
your
on.
personality.
I agree, Grace.
But I'm
I
talking
agree
about
with you.
breasts in
Grace,
general.
Grace,
Breasts
Grace,
in general.
Grace, I agree with what you're saying. You just made my whole argument. You said that it's because they're feminine. Yes, it's the difference between a male and a
Yes.
female trait. Yes.
You can't just say feminine and get away with it. Feminine means submissive.
That's what you just said. You said more feminine.
Submissive.
That is correct. No,
Okay,
feminine
so
doesn't necessarily mean any of those things.
Yes, it does. That's why you like that. The boobs also signify that they're weaker, right? And nobody's gonna take a girl in armor seriously, right? Because they've got this boobs and ass flailing around, right? They're weak
The problem
physically.
with this whole panel
You don't have
is
to
I
talk about it in terms
can't
of
make
knowledge.
arguments
You can
because they
say-
get conflated with Grace's
You can talk
arguments.
about it in terms of just guidance.
So it's actually
If
better for
somebody's
me
going
to
to
not
protect
say
you,
anything
you're also going
because
to rely on
otherwise
them
my
for
arguments
guidance.
will just get conflated with her
If somebody is
arguments.
going to feed your children,
That you're begging is saying
That's
how
not
do you hold
question
two
begging, you
contradictory-
idiot.
Yes, it is.
Well, tell me what
Yes,
question
it
begging is. You don't even know. Tell me what it is.
You tell me.
Wait, hang on. Let's let her
Oh, I
respond.
tell you what it is. You accused me of it. Tell me what it is. Tell me what question begging is. Tell me what it
You wanna
is.
just-
Wait, just let her respond. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
she's not going to answer that question either. Tell me what it is.
Bro, you do
You're not
this
gonna
thing
do it.
in every fucking
Not
bit
gonna
where
do
you
it.
ask 60 hold on, you ask 60,000 questions. You pivot and weasel away from
No, I
everything.
just ask you
Notice how
straight questions you
weaseled
won't
away?
answer.
Notice how you weaseled away from the conversation about your
Happy to have that
schizophrenia?
conversation too, but you accused me of
You
question
asked
begging.
90 are you going to let me answer?
You
Keep
accused me.
interrupting me and building your narrative. Are you going to keep interrupting
You
me? and
can't
building your
accuse me of a
narrative?
fallacy, then not tell me
Alex,
the
I have an
fallacy.
actual relationship.
Tell me
Okay,
the
I think-
fallacy.
Okay, guys, wait, hang on.
Okay. Can I take a stab at this? Okay. You can absolutely hold two different quote unquote set of ethics. You're not holding contrary sets of ethics, though. What you can understand is you can have a system of morals that stands in contradiction to the law. For instance, a Catholic might believe that it's immoral to consume pornography, but that doesn't necessarily mean that a Catholic would prescribe that it changes the law in the country that they're in, right? In a way, you could read
That's not
this
the
as a
argument.
render unto Caesar. What?
That's
Hold on.
not the
No. It doesn't seem to be the argument because you're conflating the law
It
and the
doesn't seem to be
morality. So
because
you
it's
ask
not.
somebody, when you ask somebody, do you consider it a sin when somebody does something else? Generally, what is or isn't a sin is something that you're concerned with, and you're concerned with other people in your faith. Personally, I've never been in the business of, or seen other Christians at least, maybe for Muslims it's different, maybe for Jews it's different, maybe for other people it's different, is trying to evaluate. I'd never in my life, I took 4 years of fucking Catholic high school, 8 years of Catholic grade school. Never once did we have a class where we went through, what do Muslims do that's sinful? What do Jewish people do that's sinful? We've never done that before. We're concerned with what are sins in our society, the Christian church, the Catholic church specifically. What does the catechism say? What does your preacher say?
Okay,
And
that's
then where
great,
it
but
starts and
repeat
stops.
my
So the
argument
question- hold on,
back
hold
to
on,
me.
Let me hold on.
You're arguing against a straw man.
No. You've traveled like 20,000 different.
I haven't
acres
traveled
of argument.
anywhere.
Well,
Repeat
you
my
covered
argument
so
back
much.
to
As you
me.
say it, it's true.
And then
Okay,
argue
okay,
against
okay,
that.
right,
I just want a
I'm-
good faith debate. Tell me my
I'm trying
argument.
to answer.
Then
You
tell
don't
me
have to-
my
you're trying to see
argument.
Questions. I can talk just as much as you want. Okay, I'm just trying to lay
Tell
down
me my
some basic-
argument, Destiny.
It sounds like your argument was it is impossible for a person to have one set of ethics and not condemn another person in
No,
society.
that's
for an
not my
action that would be
argument.
con-
My
Hey,
argument.
Hold on,
Right.
hold on. I'm gonna leave, Alex. Make him shut the fuck up for 2 seconds, okay?
Yeah,
Holy shit.
or else he's
Let me
gonna
finish.
run.
Okay, this was your argument, unless you're having an episode, in which case go get some antipsychotics. Your argument, because your questions to Kyla were, how can you believe that this thing is okay in society, but you personally don't believe it? It seems to be a contradiction that you're saying
not
society
my
can have one
argument.
set of ethics. Shut the fuck up, you retarded
Then
fuck. Let me
fucking
finish
tell me my
fucking statement.
argument, you
I'm
dumb
telling
blue-haired
I can't
gremlin.
even finish a fucking
What are you gonna do,
sentence.
run?
Wait,
What are you gonna do,
I'm
run?
literally restating.
I'm gonna mute all of you guys. Okay, let's just go one at a time. Let's let Destiny finish his point, then you can respond to it, Andrew.
Keep Andrew muted because he cannot
I mean,
stop
it's-
doing
Jesus
this bad
Christ, I can't even finish a single fucking statement. Okay,
go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, so
Destiny.
Andrew's line of questioning was trying to expose that Kyla had an inability to condemn anybody for sin because it seemed like she held the double standard that society could have one set of ethics and she can have a personal one, which is why Andrew was asking questions like, oh, well, do you think that this lifestyle is sinful? And then Kyla would say, well, no, I don't think so for me. Well, what about for other people? I don't judge Christians. That's why he went down the line of questioning of, is murder wrong? Is anything wrong? Because it seems like under your current system of whatever you do, you're unable to fundamentally say any particular action is wrong. And then Kyla tried to say something about utilitarianism, and he said, well, how do you hold contrary sets of ethics? That was what the entire argument was. In my opinion, I think the reason why you're running into such a difficult to answer question here is because you're conflating what is the law or what is legally permissible with what is ethical. No, the Andrew's going to say, no, I was talking about ethics the whole time, but that's not truly what we're talking about because the
Yes, it
idea,
is.
now this is where I go into my personal opinion, the idea that as a Christian,
He's gonna
you could
speed
condemn
talk, but I'm
somebody
not gonna let him get
else
off the
for not
hook.
following your Christian ethics, that's just a
He can
very
spurt
bizarre
talk
statement
all he
to me.
wants,
In my
but
personal
watch.
opinion,
One question.
from how I learned Christianity or Catholicism, usually when you're criticizing other people's
This diversion
inability
doesn't
to hold
work
to the
with
Ten
me.
Commandments, the
I've seen
Beatitudes,
this like
whatever
100
set of ethics we're
times.
talking about in terms of Christianity,
100
you're saying
times.
things like God
I'm gonna
commands
pin him
us to do
down
this,
right away.
God commands you to do that. These are the Beatitudes, these are the commandments, these are what the priest says, blah 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 blah. So usually compelling somebody within a faith. So it's a very difficult question to ask from a religious point of view is how do you condemn somebody else's morals that is outside of your faith? All you can do at that point is appeal to the law. And your ethics probably don't have to be exactly matching with what the law is. For example, in the case of smoking cigarettes or pornography. That's my thing. Okay.
Okay,
Okay,
great.
so-
Now, to address my argument was really simple. I asked Kyla a simple question. I asked
Wait,
you the
hello?
same thing.
Andrew.
What just happened?
Oh.
So,
Alex
there's a
so,
little-
so hang on,
Oh, okay.
right? Because Alex muted me again. But that wasn't my question. It wasn't my argument, which is why I asked you in good faith to repeat my argument back to me. That way we could have the productive conversation. But what I asked specifically is, can you hold two different sets of moral values, and both of them can be true at the same exact time if they conflict with each other? Meaning, if and
Just
Kyla's
restated what I just
stop
said.
because you didn't answer this
Wait,
question.
Destiny, what
You
load
didn't
finished now?
answer.
I'm
You spurred and talked a lot, but you actually didn't answer this question. The question is, if one conflicting moral value structure says that it's okay to murder and another one does not, and you're a Christian, say it's not okay to murder, and you're, let's say, a utilitarian who does, only one of those can be true. Yes or no, Destiny?
Yes.
Yes.
Problem,
Thank you.
as I restated, the problem was you're not holding, when we talk about murder, right? We're not really interested
That's it.
societally in the moral
That's the
condemnation
debate.
of murder. What we're really looking for is what is
That's
the
the
law.
debate.